On this episode of Locked On Angels, Kenley Jansen is a halo. He's the current active saves leader and fourth in saves all time, and he's heading to Anaheim. He's going to play with the Angels in 2025. So how will he perform, and what does this say about the Halo's strategy, and what does it mean for Ben Joyce? We got a lot to talk about. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Here for your 5 days a week. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, help us to get to 10K by opening day by hitting that subscribe button on YouTube. Become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's really one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our fourth season here at Locked On Angels. We're here for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday. And we're very excited because on today's show, we're talking about the fact that Kenley Jansen signed on Tuesday to be an Angel, Michael, and we're going to get into the details about that. What does that mean for Ben Joyce? We'll get into that conversation. And then I think the Halo strategy for 2025, it became a little bit clear. You know, they don't tell us nothing.
Right.
And so it's this was indicative of where you and I think that they are headed in 2025. But Mike, let's get into the details about this signing of Kenley Jansen.
Yeah, 37 years old, Johnny, a 1-year, $10 million deal. And he is currently fourth all time in saves, 447. So if he has a really, really, really good year, and the Angels have a really, really, really good year, he could get to 500 saves, 53 saves, Johnny.
Oh, we could only hope he could get 53 saves at this point.
He's fourth, like I mentioned, of saves. Craig Kimbrell is just behind him with 440. Played 12 seasons with some team just down the 5 from the Angels. He played 1 season with the Braves, 2 of the Red Sox, last 2 years with the Red Sox, about $16 million a year with the Red Sox those 2 seasons. So Angels are getting a bit of a bargain compared to what he was the last few years. 4-time All-Star, recently an All-Star in 2023 with the Red Sox. He was 5th in the Cy Young voting in 2017. He had a 1.32 ERA, 41 saves, a 3.15 ERA plus. Holy smokes, that's good. And then 215% better than league average that year.
That's right. I was going to say, you better say that because I love my ERA plus and my WRC plus, my OPS plus. Yeah, 215% better than league average. Mike, that wasn't even, I don't even think that was his best season either, but he was 5th in Cy Young voting that year. Crazy.
Right. He has been really, really good. And his last 2 years, again, with the Red Sox, John, pretty successful, right? Last year was really good. The year before was actually pretty good as well. Why don't you read those numbers to us?
Yeah, 2023, he went 3-6 with a 3.63 ERA, earned 29 saves at a 126 ERA plus. In 2024, a better year, 4-2, 3.29 ERA, 27 saves, 130 ERA plus, 54 2/3 innings pitched, 62 strikeouts, and a 1.061 walks and hits per innings pitched.
John, when you look at these numbers, they feel very similar to Carlos Estevez.
Oh, 100%.
And the thing that I really like, though, because I'm a fan, is Jansen has a better whip than Carlos Estevez.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's not walking a lot of guys. And I think that was always Carlos's Achilles heel, right? Kenley seems to be somebody that is able to get through innings 1, 2, 3. And if he does get runners on, it's probably more from a hit rather than a walk. If it is a walk, he's able to eliminate that base runner. So there's a lot of similarities between him and Carlos Estevez.
Yeah, I'll get into the some of the notable stats of kind of in terms of the hits and the walks and things like that. But what does Kenley Jansen do well on the mound? Well, first he throws a sinker at 93 miles an hour, a slider at 82, and his cutter, his bread and butter. How about the nice tradition of good closers with a good cutter, Mike, in the mold of Mariano Rivera. I love that.
Teach that to everybody that you're in the bullpen with this year, Kenley.
Yeah. We'll talk about that too as well.
Yeah.
Now this is getting into the nerd stats, but kind of how there's WRC plus, OPS plus, ERA plus, that you can score a pitcher's like nastiness on their pitches with stuff plus. So anything above, or I should say anything 100 is league average. Anything above that is going to be a percentage above league average. So he's got a 130 stuff plus on the sinker. That's second best among relievers and closers. A 104 stuff plus on the slider and a 121 stuff plus on his cutter. And for reference, Emmanuel Clase's cutter is at 125 and Michael Kopech's cutter is at 124. The cutter gets a 28.2% whiff rate, and he uses it as his put-away pitch 26.2% of the time last season. The sinker gets a 29.7% whiff rate, so nearly 30% swinging and missing. He puts people away with it 31% of the time last year. The cutter last year had a +7 run value. The slider had a +3 run value, and the sinker had a +1 run value. I went to his Baseball Savant page and I liked all the red I was seeing. And then he was in the 84th percentile in strikeout rate, 28.4%, 62nd percentile in whiff rate at 27%. Mike, some notable things that we need to just be aware of with Kenley Jansen: a 9.2% walk rate. That puts him in the 32nd percentile among all pitchers. And you mentioned it, with a whip of 1.061 last year, it means on average, you can expect somebody to get on base once an inning, whether that's through the walk or through the hit. He's got a great fielding independent pitching, or as we like to say, FIP last year. It was an even 3. However, the expected FIP was 4.04, so 1 run higher than it actually was in reality. That's also going to be the result of letting guys on base via the walk, because fielding independent pitching is everything they can control. The strikeout, the walk, a hit by pitch, or a home run, that's everything you control from the mound. Takes defense out of the equation entirely, takes hits out of the equation entirely. This is, like I said, the result of letting guys get on base via the walk. Think about like Tyler Anderson last year and how good he was, and his FIP was good, but his expected FIP was pretty high, and we all kept saying, man, it's going to catch up with him here soon. So the 1 run differential between Kenley's actual FIP and what he put up, or what was expected of him, I'm not too worried about. Here's what's encouraging to me is that Jansen's expected batting average of 208 last year was kind of right in line with what he actually got in terms of batting average against at 196. So they're right in line with each other. Not much room for differentiation. Not like he's outperforming his expected numbers. They're right in line with one another. And so that's important. Now, something that we need to pay attention to, Jansen's hard hit percentage and average exit velocity, they've creeped up in the last 3 seasons. And so, that's going to yield some base hits. The home run percentage was actually one of the lowest of his career at 1.8%. And for reference, Carlos Estevez sat about 2.3% for home run percentage in his time with the Angels last year. So just some notes to, keep in mind as you're watching Kenley Jansen. Is he going to blow some saves, blow some leads, maybe let the game get tied? Yes, it's going to happen. It's going to happen to every reliever. However, I think they got themselves a good one in Kenley Jansen.
Yeah, the bullpen currently stands this way: Kenley Jansen, Ben Joyce, Brock Burke, who is a lefty, Ryan Zephyr-John, Jose Quijada, Hans Kraus, Jose Suarez, and Garrett McDaniels. And Robert Stevenson is probably going to start on the IL when the season starts. I think they can do that maybe today or tomorrow. They can begin to make those moves. And so that's where the bullpen currently stands. I like that bullpen. I think you've got some good arms. Robert Stevenson comes back, and he's the guy that he was with Tampa Bay.
And Jose Suarez is out.
Right. That's the guy you want to ditch there, because you got a lot of lefties in there, and they got to keep Garrett McDaniels in there because he's a Rule 5 draft pick. So bullpen looks pretty good, Johnny. I'm excited about that. A lot of young arms, a lot of guys that are ready to prove themselves. Now, I know that there were some criticisms that were out there about Kenley Jansen. There's been a couple of them, like $10 million a year for Kenley Jansen, Well, you and I've talked often about how the Angels have to either go more years or more money, but this guy's going to be a future Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be somebody that is going to be probably first ballot Hall of Fame, especially if he keeps on pitching. And he's probably not going to be done this year. I could see him continuing to pitch. And there's other players out there that got about the same amount of money, right? Like Jeff Hoffman got $11 million a year. Old friend alert, Carlos Estevez got $10 million a year. And Blake Treinen, he's 36 years old. He signed a 2-year deal, got $11 million a year. Aroldis Chapman, he's 37. He signed for $10.75 million a year. Kirby Yates, almost 38, got $13 million a year. So, John, it fits right into what all of these big pitchers have gotten. I've just learned, and maybe this is just a tip. This is not even in the script, so this one's for free. This is a tip. When you see ridiculous responses that are either really, really far to one side or to the other, those are the ones that you just want to keep scrolling on by. You want reasonable, logical responses, and good, reasonable, logical responses are, so how does this help the team? Not, I can't believe, right? Like, how does this help the team? I'm really interested in how this helps the team. They paid for a really good arm, and it's kind of right in line with what a lot of the really good arms are going for right now, right?
Yeah. I would hope that us here at Locked On Angels and our everydayers, we can cut through the nonsense of like social media, because I saw all of those criticisms. $10 million a year for Kenley Jansen. Well, first of all, is it your money? No.
Right.
Then hush. Right. Do you want Artie to spend money or not?
Right.
And do you want him to spend it in the right places? Because this is spending it in the right places. This is a really good piece for the bullpen.
Exactly.
And like you mentioned, this is the going rate for closers who are all in their upper 30s, Mike, just like me. Oh my gosh, just like me. But here's another thing. He put up 1.4 Fangraphs WAR last year, and we've been talking about this a lot. You can usually equate a one WAR player for every one WAR. That's about $8 million worth of production.
Yeah.
And 1.4 is about $12 million worth of production. So this is a discount for the Angels. It's $2 million less than what he put up last year. This puts the Angels at $202 million in terms of payroll, but in terms of the luxury tax, which is what we pay attention to, they sit about $219.4 million right now for the luxury tax. That's about $21 million under that first luxury tax threshold. So they've got some wiggle room if they want to add anybody else to this roster.
Yeah, John, 37 years old. That was another critique, but you got a veteran guy who is still better than 30% than league average. Like he's greater than 30% league average. He just put up his second best season in 7 years. The other one was in 2021. I mean, this guy is really good. And he's somebody that maybe compares to previous guys like Joe Nathan. Joe Nathan is somebody that I loved when he played, and he was a Twins guy. He was a Giants guy. At age 37, he had 37 saves. Age 38, he had 43 saves. Age 39, he had 35 saves. So it's not unusual, Tom Jones. It's not unusual to sign somebody to bring in to be a veteran. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the final segment, because our buddies over at Angels Win tweeted something that was my first thought when I saw this veteran. So I think, age does matter, but Kenley Jansen he's not getting worse. He's actually been very consistent over the last few years.
Yeah. And the people who age the best in baseball, they're your DHs, your first baseman, and your pitchers, especially relievers, and especially closers. Like all the names you mentioned, Kirby Yates, Aroldis Chapman, Blake Treinen, they're 38, 37, 36, right? So these are guys, and then Craig Kimbrell, he's going to get a deal somewhere. He's 37 as well. So this is not unusual. Like you said, Tom Jones, this is par for the course for any team. And so we're very fortunate to get this signing done. Last criticism I saw, and I jumped on this one very quickly, and I appreciate Sister Swilly Sports, Halo Sister Swilly, sharing this as well. Angels have to have leads in order to get saves. Kenley's not going to get any save opportunities. Well, let's calm down, because Carlos Estevan had 51 saves in his time with the Angels.
Right.
Over the full season of 2023, he had 31 saves. Mike, he had 20 saves in 2024, and that was all before the trade deadline. So we're going to get into our thoughts about this move as we continue our conversation. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. When we continue our conversation, what about Ben Joyce? What becomes of his role in the bullpen? We all expected him to be the closer coming into this season. What changes now that Kenley Jansen is here? We're going to get into that conversation coming right up.
As you're watching or listening to Locked On Angels, maybe you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious. Well, you can find one with wonderful pistachios, Johnny. I love wonderful pistachios. They're so good. Good source of protein. Wonderful pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber, better for you, unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling a whole lot better and fueling you a whole lot longer.
Okay, are you a shell guy or a no shell guy?
Man, I like the no shell because then I can put it in my hand, I can pop it in. As you know, I've started going to the gym, just 45, you got to do that, right? The belt line was like, ooh, my
45. Are you a closing pitcher too?
they signed me. Yeah. So then I can pop it. I don't have to go and get the snacks. You know me, and I like gummy stuff. So I can get these and it's good for me, and I can snack at work. John, they're great for like when you're driving on a road trip, or maybe you just need a quick protein boost. I know my daughter takes some to her job and it's at her desk. And so these are really wonderful pistachios. You should grab some. And if you are interested in maybe not just popping them in, but you like to crack the shells because you feel like you're maybe at a baseball game, you can grab those as well. Get snackin and get crackin with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Everydayers, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Great to be back 5 days a week. We're continuing our conversation about Kenley Jansen signing with the Angels on Tuesday. But what happens to Ben Joyce? I was thinking about, I don't know if you've ever watched Portlandia, but there's a skit where Fred Armisen goes around town with a bunch of guys and they sing, "What about men? What about men?" So I kept singing, "What about Ben?" all day yesterday, thinking about, what about Ben? What do we do? Ben, yeah. What's the biggest question here, Mike, is that what does it mean for Ben Joyce in this bullpen now that Kenley Jansen is here? I think it's a good place to start by saying Kenley's going to be the closer to start the year, at least. And I say start the year because, hey, if we flip him at the deadline for, 4 pitchers or 4 players like they did with Luis Garcia or Carlos Estevez, if there's a contender who needs a closer, you can bet Kenley Jansen's going to be on the trade wire there. So he will be the closer to at least start this season because he's chasing that saves record. He's 31 saves behind Lee Smith to tie for third on the all-time saves list. So I am sure and certain that he signed with the agreement, hey, you're closing games for us. Yeah. I know there's some questions about that, but he's definitely going to be the closer. But what does that mean for Ben Joyce, Mike? What do you say?
There's still questions about Ben, and we talked about this not too long ago on Locked On Angels. We're all in on him closing. And without this Kenley Jansen signing, we were like, hey, he should be the closer. Give him a shot, right? But he's had to deal with some injuries. He had the shoulder issue that kept him out the last month of the season. They shut him down, which I thought was a really good idea. And having Jansen gives them time to mitigate and manage the workload for Ben Joyce and his potential injuries. He's somebody that needs to learn to go back-to-back days, and he just started doing that. He did it 3 times last year, just 3 times, John. Mm-hmm. And so he's got to do that more often. And obviously the Angels have to win more often to give more opportunity. But that's why Jansen's here, because he's somebody that can teach him how to do that. He's also, this extends the bullpen, having Ben Joyce be your 7th, 8th inning guy to come in. And John, a lot of conversation was around, well, Ben Joyce can throw 105. And yes, it's electric, right? It is electric. And that's really exciting. But here's the reality is you throw really hard, but we need you to be really effective. And we want you to gain the experience on how to be effective. And I think Kenley Jansen can be a great mentor for Ben Joyce as he prepares for this closer role. Still really young, right?
That was a lot of the chatter I saw. Like when MLB posted it on Twitter, a lot of the comments were like, why wouldn't you put Ben Joyce there? He throws 105. Right. And it was a lot of people who, were Mets fans or some other kind of fan, not Angels fans. And I think, yes, that's exciting from the outside looking in.
Right.
But when you're in it, especially Angel fans, they understand, Joyce he could use some time. He
Right.
could use some experience.
It's why being an everydayer matters, because you're paying attention to the team. You're watching the team regularly. You can tell who watches this team regularly and who doesn't. And the people who critiqued this move are people that are like, well, the Angels can't do anything right in the baseball landscape. Like, hey, they need to get more players. And then they get Kenley Jansen. Not that player, right?
Exactly. Mike, to me, Ben Joyce being an 8th inning guy is not a bad thing, because sometimes earning the hold in the 8th inning and keeping the score where it is, that's valuable experience as well. He's still going to have to prevent runs. He's still going to have to keep other teams from scoring late. He's still going to have to do all the things that you would need to do in a closer situation. Just, I don't know, sometimes lower stakes, honestly, sometimes higher stakes.
I was just going to say, eighth inning is really where the game is held together. I mean, the Angels wouldn't be the great team that they were in the early 2000s without Scott Shields coming in the 7th and 8th inning. Scott Shields should be a Hall of Famer. He doesn't have the stats that maybe back of the bullpen guys are supposed to have to get into the Hall of Fame, but Scott Shields was somebody that got the ball to Troy Percival and to Frankie Rodriguez. Scott Shields was the guy that came in when it was, bases loaded and 2 outs or 1 out, and he had to get out of the inning. And Ben Joyce has had a couple of those games already in his career. And I think that we're going to find that that's where the game's going to be won. And then Kenley Jansen shuts it down and gives them no hope. The other team, that is, gives them no hope in the 9th inning.
That's why they call him the fireman. He's going to put out the fires and get out of those situations. Yeah. You said Scott, who'd you say? Sorry.
Scott Shields.
Scott Shields.
Yeah.
And then I was actually thinking about Scott Downs. I liked Scott Downs. Yeah. I just came to mind when you said Scott. Listen, if there's some combination of Robert Stevenson, Ben Joyce, and Kenley Jansen as your 7, 8, 9 guys, that's a really good back of the bullpen right there. Not to mention somebody like Ryan Zefferjohn, Brock Burke, who turned it around with the Angels. Jose Quijada's got some gas as well. We all know that he needs to, add another pitch that's going to help him be effective.
Pitch,
look, I mean, that's Stevenson, Joyce, and Jansen. I really like the back end of the pen right there.
Yeah. And then this tweet from angelswin.com was like, they were in my head. I think any longtime Angels fan.
Was it Chuck or Jeff? Who do you think sent this tweet?
Well, Chuck talked about it on his own Twitter page. So I think that he was starting to, they're both pretty smart. So here's what they tweeted. First of all, they said, I remember when Lee Smith was brought in to mentor a future closer, Troy Percival. Then Percy had his time in the lab with his predecessor, Frankie Rodriguez, who then took over the reins as closer. John, that was in my mind. As soon as this happened, I was like, Lee Smith, 1995, when he came in, that was so good. That team was actually really good. I was so thrilled as a 15-year-old in 1995 when they signed Lee Smith. I was like, finally, a really good closer, because they hadn't had somebody that closed games for a long time since Brian Harvey. They had a guy named Joe Gray that came in and did that. And those guys were they were awful. They could not close games. And so when Lee Smith came in, I'm like, wow, this is the first time that we have a really good closer. And it also meant that any video game that I'm playing with the Angels, you have a really good closer to close the game, because you had to figure it out with the terrible bullpens they had in the early 90s.
And he had to change his name from whoever it was to Lee Smith.
Yes, by the way, shout out to the Everydayer who commented and said that they remember, like, what was it, Big Magoo and some of the names that were on the old Ken Griffey Jr. games, Johnny. So I love this move, because I think that Kenley Jansen can be a great teammate for Ben Joyce, and I think that he could be a great influence on Ben Joyce. And if he teaches him to throw the cutter, man, that would even be better. Woo. And Ben Joyce is open to learning, right? Because he has that fastball, then he's got the splinker. And so adding a third pitch, if possible for him, could be great. But I think the mindset and the mentality is probably the best thing that Kenley Jansen can bring to somebody as young and growing and with all sorts of potential like Ben Joyce.
Yeah, I think the big question here is, when is Ben going to be the guy? And you know what? If he's the guy in 2026, because he had another full season of experience behind him in 2025, whether that is in the 8th inning, Mike, he's going to get save opportunities. Kenley's not going to do every single save opportunity. So we are going to see Ben in the 9th inning. But I think that this kind of reminds me of what the Angels ended up doing last year, where it was like, we're going to give the opportunity to the young guys and see how things play out. And, Ben wasn't up with the team the whole time. In fact, he was a completely different pitcher once he added the splinker. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of says, hey, let's give him another year to figure it out and see how a full season plays out where he's on the roster. Hopefully his health sticks and hopefully he stays in the bullpen. I think that it's a wise decision to do this. I think Ben can be the guy at any point in the future. I think that he could be the guy, but I think this year, I think it's wise to kind of hold off and just see what you have in Ben Joyce. You pretty much know what you have, but at the same time, give him a full healthy season as the splinker guy and see how that all pans.
John, we've always wanted to know about the strategy for the Angels, and they never come forward and actually like talk about that.
Right.
And right or wrong, we have to kind of like pull out our magnifying glass and go, okay, so what's actually happening here? What are they doing? But I think that
they always say they want to be competitive, and that's just like the company line every year. Even like last year when it was like, you want to be competitive, but you didn't do anything except sign a injured closer last year. Right.
Which, if I could just reiterate again, like, you just get straight with us, be honest with us. Like, hey, we're building for 2026. Like, Angel fans would buy into that, right? And so, but this signing, I think, does signify what the Angels' strategy is in 2025. They're going to let the young players continue to play and develop. They're going to surround that young core with veteran guys who can lead by example, mentor them, help them to grow. But they're bringing in competent players. They're bringing in Jansen and d'Arnaud, who both can really bring, I think, a great leadership model, a great cultural model. Jansen, there's stories about him being a great clubhouse guy, like Carlos Estevez was for the bullpen last year. I think Jansen brings that. But Johnny, they're also gonna be good on the field.
Right. That's the big thing is they actually contribute.
Yes.
And not to say that Estevez didn't contribute, but with Ben Joyce, there's kind of a question mark of, okay, how often can we go to him with the saves and all of that stuff? d'Arnaud obviously is going to be a bigger influence than like a Matt Theis. And I think, Estevez was a good clubhouse guy and he was good for the bullpen, but I think you go to somebody like Jansen, again, a future Hall of Famer who's been there, done that. I think that that's a really wise move. Something I think that I will say is he's got a little more to offer in terms of experience, where he's been, where he's going, than Estevez does. Estevez was a good closer for 2 years with the Angels.
Yeah.
But that was the first time he was a closer. Now he's got this new career trajectory where he can be a closer. But I think Jansen has more of the experience.
Yeah, really, Estevez was the closer last year, right? Because in 2023, there was still kind of a debate on if he was going to close or not, and it kind of just fell into his lap. Last year, I felt like he came in going, all right, I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why he had 20 saves in the first half, because he was coming in and really being solid and strong for the Halos.
So if you think about it, this kind of signifies what the Angels' strategy is. Again, like you said, you got to hold a magnifying glass. You got to read between the lines, all that stuff. But Kenley Jansen coming in to mentor Ben Joyce and the rest of the bullpen. Like you mentioned earlier, imagine if Kenley teaches Joyce his cutter. That would turn him into an elite guy. And then I love, again, what AngelsWin.com had to say just about the passing of the torch with these closer type guys. I think I saw a great reply, and it was like, that's the Angels way. That's the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Where you had somebody passing the torch to the next guy, somebody that you counted on, somebody you relied on, but also mentoring along the way. That's been really effective for the Angels in the past. I think that you pair up Travis d'Arnaud with obviously Logan O'Hoppe, but also the young starting pitchers, Mike. You can teach Logan how to manage a game. He's going to be behind the scenes helping to do the in-game prep work before the game starts. He knows how to work well with the young pitchers. He also knows that he wants Logan O'Hoppe to be remembered as the best catcher in Angels history. That got me fired up.
Right.
And then you can guide young starting pitchers through a game if you're Travis d'Arnaud. So not only is he helping O'Hoppe and teaching O'Hoppe how to be more like d'Arnaud, but he's also helping these young starting pitchers as well.
Yeah, and that's where Kyle Hendricks comes in, right? That's why he was brought over. Now, he might be able to find something. It sounds like the Angels maybe have been able to identify something in him, and he identified something in the second half of last year, and he improved. His overall numbers were terrible, but he improved in the second half of last year from June on, really
it's like
improved.
Performance-wise, he's kind of the only question mark. Like, I feel good about Jansen. I feel good about d'Arnaud. Hendricks, it's TBD, but it does seem like they have figured some things out, right?
But he's going, I think, going to be a really good influence on Reed Detmers and on Jack Kohanowitz, and maybe he can get Detmers to get out of his head. And if they can get Detmers to be just a glimpse of what he was when he first came up, and when he started to figure some things out, the time that he was throwing the no-hitter, or even the beginning of last season, he was really, really great. And so, John, it feels like this is a pretty good strategy for a young Halo team that needs to develop and needs to grow. And this is the team that we've decided to be fans of, right? And so you want them to go and do what the Dodgers did or do what the Yankees do, but the reality is that's just not how they plan. It's just not how their strategy is rolling out. What they're doing is they're building from within. And this is how the Angels got really good in the early 2000s, because they built around Anderson and Salmon and Erstad and Howie Kendrick and Eric Ibar. They built around those guys. And it seems like that's what Perry Manassian's strategy is. Again, if he just came out and told us that would be awesome. But I'm looking at what he's done, and I think he's really surrounded this young core with some great veterans. And now it's just a matter of what kind of results can they put out on the field. And I love that you've said, I think that they might make the playoffs. It might be an anomaly, right? They might be there. You and I've kind of said 2026.
Now I'm sitting pretty with Kenley Jansen as our closer.
Well, and I think here's what I would want to say is, like, don't discount, Angel fans, don't discount culture. Don't discount vibes, right? Like don't discount that. I'll brag on the team that I get to work with.
Power of friendship, Michael.
Yes. I'll brag on the team that I get to work with every day. We are a team of 11 people. And we have a church of over 1,500 people, and they kill it. And part of the reason why they kill it is because they really like each other. We're really good friends, and we took a terrible culture and we've turned it around. And that's why they're killing it. That's why it's going really, really, a small team doing a big work. And I think that that's something that the Angels are working on. Does that mean that they're going to be this successful team this year? That's TBD. But I do think that you can't discount culture. And these are cultural moves, the d'Arnaud's, the Hendricks, and even the Kenley Jansens. These are cultural moves that move the needle. And so 13 wins to get to 76 is what, the stats were saying. We talked about that yesterday. Perhaps they could get to 20 wins, right? A 20-win improvement, because they've made some significant cultural moves on this team that'll help the young guys to really grab onto their potential and turn it into performance.
Yeah, the strategy was kind of there with d'Arnaud and Hendricks. And it was like, yeah, I guess. But now that Jansen's here, I think it's even more real than it was before. So that's where they're heading in 2025. You can see the vision. Again, they won't come out and say it, but if we can get on board with that vision, I think that we're going to be in for a pretty good season.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. You can find his show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, find today's episode, get in the comment section. We want to hear from you. Mike, we had to change plans because of this Jansen signing, but remind everybody what we're going to get to on Thursday's show.
We're always willing to change plans if the Angels are signing really good players. But if they don't sign anybody, if there isn't any breaking news, then we're going to talk about how the Halo system was ranked dead last. And is that right? And can the Angels change that narrative? We're going to discuss tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right. We hope you'll come back and join us for that. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.
Kenley Jansen. Who would have thought that we would be excited about a Dodger?
The irony.